Hello and welcome to Narayana IS. I am Pratik, your faculty for daily news analysis. Students, let us start with a motivational quote to boost your confidence, right? So, what is today's motivational quote? When citizens read, when they learn, the country leads. This shows the importance of reading, learning, acquiring knowledge, developing the scientific temper. That's the reason it is very important to read, because through reading you get to know so many things. Else we depend on someone's opinions, right? So make sure that you should, with this practice of reading, the more you read, the more wisdom you gain, through which you can take practical decisions, right? So now, to all those students who wants to make a meaningful impact in the society, right? For all those students, Narayana IS has introduced 1 year and 2 year prelims cum mains integrated course. Now, this prelims cum mains integrated course will focus on prelims, mains, and interview. The focus will be on integrated learning, right? The focus won't be on prelims and mains separately or differently, but it will be an integrated approach to cover both prelims as well as main syllabus. And the USP of Narayana is that every week there will be a test. In order to understand the coverage of syllabus and in order to understand the comprehension of the topics that a student has covered in the last week, every weekend there will be a test and the questions will be of UPSC standard. So here a student will develop the practice of attempting or writing a test every week. So let's say for a year or let's say for 2 years, if a student has developed the habit of writing tests every weekend, which means for that particular student, writing the UPSC examination is just going to be another examination. There'll be no fear, no anxiety. Why? Because the student is in the practice of writing and giving tests. The test will focus on both integrated one. You don't have to, learn 6th, 7th, 8th or 9th classes differently. So one subject will cover all the important concepts and topics from starting from the 6th standard until the 12th, and then will also help you with the GS books. So it's a one-stop solution for all those students who are serious to clear the UPSC examination and thus contribute to the growth of a country, right? So on your screen you can see a QR code. All those interested students, please scan the QR code. Our team will get back to you, right? Okay, so these are the features of the course. You can go through the features. Now, let us focus on the topics of the day. So these are the 6 or rather 5 topics that we shall be discussing in today's DNA. The first topic is taken from Hindu page number 10. Now, in this topic, the focus will be on the Tamil issue between India and Sri Lanka. How Tamil issue has always been in the center of India and Sri Lanka talks. Why is this Tamil issue important for both India as well as Sri Lanka, and how India is navigating or addressing the Tamil issue in Sri Lanka is what we'll be understanding the first topic. The second topic is taken from Hindu page number 10. Now the author of the article tries to highlight the fact or tries to highlight the importance of drafting a treaty on crimes against humanity. Crimes against humanity. As of now, there is no dedicated specific treaty to address the crimes against humanity. And here we'll understand why a treaty is important to address the, address the crimes against humanity. The third article is taken from page number 14. Now here we'll understand the challenges the most vulnerable tribal groups in our country are facing with respect to education access, right? So we'll refer or understand the particularly vulnerable tribal groups of our country. The fourth article talks about a device through which we can determine the time based on the location of the sun, right? So this is a new device that ISRO has designed. So we'll understand what exactly is this new device. And the fifth article will just we'll just focus on, I think the title of the topic here mentioned is incorrect. So the fifth topic will talk about the importance of growing or manufacturing the solar cells in our country. So these are the 5 topics that we shall be discussing in today's video. Let us start with the first topic. The title of the first topic is Reality Checks on Sri Lanka's Tamil Question, right? So, in this article, focus on the Tamil question, and Tamil question a part of India and Sri Lanka ties, right? And you can mark this topic under GS paper 2, International Relations. Under IR, we have a subtopic in name, India and its neighborhood relations, right? So, now there's a question asked on India and Sri Lanka relations in the year 2013, which means if our neighboring country is in the news, then a question from that country or India and that particular country is expected in the UPSC examination. That's the reason whenever it comes to the neighborhood countries, it is important to understand the topic holistically, right? So, what is the context? See, the Tamil question, right? What do you mean by Tamil question? Which means the Tamil, which is one of the ethnic groups in Sri Lanka. Now, given the challenges the Tamilians are facing in Sri Lanka and given the connection of the Sri Lankan Tamilians with the Indian Tamilians, India has always been very sensitive when it comes to addressing the Tamilian question or concern in Sri Lanka. Which means that the Tamilians are facing some challenges, problems. Which are these challenges? We'll discuss in some time. So, the Tamilian question, whenever India and Sri Lanka interact or meet, the Tamilian question always is at the center of the negotiation. There's always a debate or rather discussion on the Tamilian question whenever India and Sri Lanka meet or whenever there are bilateral meetings. Now, given that a new president in Sri Lanka has been elected, it would be interesting to see how the new president will address the Tamilian concern or question in Sri Lanka. Now, during the elections, during the campaigning, the new president of Sri Lanka had, mentioned that he'll try his level best to reconcile the differences between the Tamilians, right? To reconcile the differences between the Tamilians and the majority Sinhalese. Which means the context says that the Tamilian question is one of the important issues between India and Sri Lanka. Now, if I talk about the composition, see, this is the map of Sri Lanka. The Tamilians, they are an ethnic minority. Tamilians, they are an ethnic minority in Sri Lanka. Now, they inhabit or they live in the northern and the eastern part of Sri Lanka. So, if you see the one in the pink are the Sinhalese people who are in majority in Sri Lanka, right? Then we have the Sri Lankan Tamils, and then the yellow part, highlights or indicates the Sri Lankan Moors. Moors are the Muslims of Sri Lanka, right? And then these, the one in the blue, are the Indian origin Tamilians, right? So, Indian Tamilians who live in Sri Lanka, right? So, this is the population composition of Sri Lanka. So, as I told you, the majority population comprises that of Sinhalese, which constitutes like 75 to 80%. The Tamilians, they constitute around 15% of the population, right? But the problem is that the Tamilians are facing many issues, right? Now, which are the issues? In order to understand the issues, you need to understand the civil war, right? See, just like India, Sri Lanka also got independence. Post getting independence, right? Now, before independence, the minority Tamilians, right, were dominating the political spectrum, educational spectrum. All the important offices were dominated by the Tamilians. But post independence, because of democracy and because of elections, the Sinhalese came to power. Now the Sinhalese started to discriminate against the Tamilians. For example, the entry into schools was banned for the Tamilian students. Then the Tamilian people who working in the government offices were terminated, which means the preference was given to the Sinhalese. Now, gradually, the Tamilians became a marginalized group. Now, as the Tamilians were facing discrimination, they started to revolt, they started to protest, and the protest culminated into violence, which means now they started to violently act against the majority Sinhalese. For example, in the year 1956, the Sinhalese had framed a law, thereby making Sinhalese the official language of Sri Lanka, which means only one language was recognized, and that is the Sinhalese. See, in India, there is no national language. India, despite the fact that Hindus are in majority, there is no national language of a country. Despite the fact that Hindi is spoken widely or majority of the people speak Hindi, Hindi is not the national language. We have the official language. There's a difference. We do not have a national language. We have the official language, and English and Hindi are the official languages of a country at the center, and every state has or have their own state official language. Now, as I told you, the protest culminated into violent activities or violent protests, starting with the civil war in the year 1983 to 2009, which means for close to 30 years, Sri Lanka was engulfed, was trapped in a bloody civil war. And who are fighting in this civil war? The Tamilians, who were in minority. They faced a discrimination, and so they started to protest against the majority Sinhalese community. So the Sinhalese and the Tamilians fought a bloody civil war for close to 30 years. In the year 2009, finally the Tamilians, led by LTTE, Liberation of Tiger, Tamil and Elams. Now, some countries label this group as terrorist, some label this as a revolutionary group fighting for the rights of Tamilians. Right? Now, Sri Lanka, of course, labels this group as terrorist country. Right? Now, in order to address this issue, India intervened. Right? For example, for the initial 4 years, 83 to 87, India supported the LTT group. Now, once India realized that LTT is crossing all the boundaries, India signed an accord with Sri Lanka. India-Sri Lanka Accord of the year 1987. Now, in this accord, India said that we will try our best to make the LTT surrender. We'll force the LTT to surrender. And in response, you need to give political rights, education rights, employment rights to the Tamilians. You give them political rights, you give them education rights, you give them employment rights. So this was the essence of India-Sri Lanka Peace Accord of 1987. However, the LTT did not surrender, which means this accord was not implemented, or rather this accord did not come into effect. Why? Because they refused to surrender, and as they refused to surrender, and post the death of Rajiv Gandhi, who killed Rajiv Gandhi? The ex-Prime Minister, LTT. Post 1989, post the death of Rajiv Gandhi, India stopped their intervention in the civil war, and now post 2009, once the civil war ended, right, the Tamilians are fighting for post-war. See, in this, 30 years of civil war, thousands and lakhs of Tamilian people were displaced. They were displaced from their land. Right? Now they have no education access. They are, illiterate, which means no scope for employment. At the same time, even to this date, the military station in the areas inhabited by the Tamilians, that is the northern part and the eastern part. So there's a discrimination. Even to this date, the Tamilians are facing discrimination. There's no education access. The military, they station their post in the Tamilian dominated areas. Post-war recovery, which means in the overall development of Sri Lanka, the Tamilians are not given due share. So these are some of the issues that the Tamilians are still facing to this state, which India tries to address through talks with Sri Lanka. This is the historical context of the Tamilian issue. I hope you understood the historical context. Now, whenever a new president is elected in Sri Lanka, there's a tradition that the president of Sri Lanka makes his first foreign trip to India. Anyone who becomes the president in Sri Lanka, this is a tradition, and this reflects the historical and strategic importance of India and Sri Lanka relations. Now the new president, Disayanki, the new president has won a historical mandate. 2/3 of the people have voted for this president, and his victory, the president says that his victory reflects that people from different backgrounds, different communities have voted his political party. His political party is National People's Power, NPP, which means there is wide support from different communities and different ethnic group to the new president elected in Sri Lanka. And as I told you, the president during his election campaign held that he will try his best to address the Tamilian issue. Right? Now the election and his promise to address the Tamilian issue shows that Sri Lanka is trying to stay committed or be committed to democracy. Right? Now the joint statement given by the Indian Prime Minister, which means once they had discussion, they gave a joint statement, as in the areas that they discussed. The joint statement given by both India and Sri Lanka highlights the growing ties in the political area, political, economic, and strategic area. The focus is to leverage or enhance the political ties, economic ties, strategic ties. Now, India and Sri Lanka, right? India and Sri Lanka, one thing you need to note, from 2009 onwards until, let's say, uh, until the 2020s, or rather 2015, India was very concerned with respect to Tamil issue. But now India is in a way diluting its overall focus, or rather diluting its attention to the Tamilian cause. What does it mean? It means that India now is focusing on the broader issues that is affecting India and Sri Lanka ties. Since so many decades in the past, India used to focus only on the Tamilian issue. But now, along with the Tamilian issue, India is focusing on other overarching or other important issues. Which are these issues? I'll discuss. Which means that there is shift in India's interest. The focus was on the Tamilian issue. Now the focus has shifted to address the other major issues. So to say, the major issue being the Chinese involvement in Sri Lanka, the Chinese involvement or expansion in the Indian Ocean region. So India is working with Sri Lanka to counter the influence of China. India is working with Sri Lanka to counter the influence of China, which means the focus has shifted towards strategic issues over the political issues with respect to Tamilian issue. That doesn't mean India has completely abandoned the Tamilian cause. No. Whenever India and Sri Lanka meet, India makes a point that Sri Lanka addresses the concerns of the Tamilians. What are the concerns? Political autonomy, equitable development, equitable development, education access, provincial election. What is provincial election? Which means state elections. State elections are referred to as provincial elections, right? Now, what are the broader implications? As I told you, right, India's waning role, which means India's reducing role and geopolitical competition with China. As I told you, since decades, our focus was on the Tamilian issue, but now we are focusing on the Chinese issue. We are ensuring how India can work with China to counter the effect of China. For example, now China has invested massively in the Hambantota port and the Colombo port. So Chinese have made massive investments in these ports in Sri Lanka. Now India will be not comfortable or uncomfortable to see China coming close to India. India is also developing Trincomalee port. Trincomalee port. So the point is how India can counter the influence of China by working with China. For example, under the guise of making development in these ports, Chinese were also employing their submarines so as to or so for the purpose of surveillance in the Indian Ocean region or to understand the strategic locations of the Indian Navy in the Indian Ocean region. So the Chinese, under the guise of making investments or development in these ports, have been using their military submarines so as to keep a check on the Indian Navy vessels or Indian ships in the Indian Ocean region. So given the competition between India and China, India is ensuring that China does not go completely in the basket of, or sorry, Sri Lanka does not go completely, or Sri Lanka does not completely sit on the lap of China. Right? Now, impact on regional stability. Now, by focusing on these strategic issues, India cannot ignore the Tamilian issue. Why? Because if India ignores the Tamilian issue, there will be renewed ethnic conflict between the Sinhalese and Tamilians. There will be, the violence will again be a part of the Sri Lankan politics. And if Sri Lanka is disturbed because of the violence, the impact will also be on India, as it happened in the 80s and 90s. So India will also have to pay or face the brunt of the violence in Sri Lanka. So whenever any neighboring country is disturbed, the implication will also be seen in India. For example, whenever there is a turmoil going on in Bangladesh, there will be security implication in India, Myanmar, India, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan. So India has to ensure to work with the developing countries so as to ensure that the situation does not go completely out of hand. Why? Else there will be security implication on our country. Right? Now, the new president or the governance of the new president will be scrutinized. He has promised a lot of things, which means now the world will see how the new president in Sri Lanka will reconcile the differences of Sinhalese and the Tamilians. Now, if this reconciliation coming together becomes successful, this will become as an international example for other countries where or which is characterized by different ethnicities. Right? So, only time will tell if the new president of Sri Lanka will work towards the reconcilement of the majority and the minority community. Now, it is interesting to note that some of the Tamilian political parties, some of the Tamilian political parties faced a defeat even in the north and the eastern part, which means the Tamilian people have voted the NPP into power, that is the new president. The Tamilians have not supported the Tamilian political parties, which means these traditional Tamilian political parties have lost the support of the Tamilians. Forget about the rest of the population, which means the traditional Tamilian political parties have to introspect and to understand the demand of people. Now, the people of Sri Lanka are not happy with the fact that the Tamilian political parties, they seek for international support to address the Tamilian issue. The people of Sri Lanka are not happy with the international intervention, right? So, this is another issue. Role of international actors. Now, the Western countries, right? So to say, the Western countries like US, UK, France, like India, have been traditionally supporting the Tamilian cause or Tamilian human rights issue. But now, as as Sri Lanka is going close to China, the international actors are also taking a note of this. And in future, the international actors or the Western countries might dilute their external advocacy for the Tamilian issue, which means just like India, the Western countries might work on other broader issues with Sri Lanka than to just focus on the Tamilian issue. Why? Because just like India, the Western countries do not want Sri Lanka to go too close to China. Right? That's the reason the international actors, they will also change their approach and focus on other broader issues to counter the influence of China in Sri Lanka. Economic development and political solutions. See, post the Civil War 2009, Sri Lanka has to focus on economic development for post-war recovery, which means they have to work with India, China, other countries for the economic development. But economic development won't be alone sufficient to address other issues like the Tamilian issues, for which political solution is the only solution. Which means here China or Sri Lanka has to balance the economic development and the political solution to address some of the domestic issues. And finally, perception of Sri Lanka in global politics. Now, how Sri Lanka will handle the Tamil issue, and how Sri Lanka will, balance India and China. How Sri Lanka will address the Tamil issue and how Sri Lanka will balance India, big country, India and China, will impact the global reputation, which means the way Sri Lanka handles these two issues. This will form as a basis for the global reputation. Based on how China handles these issues, the world will try to analyze or understand how Sri Lanka is approaching. So, the global reputation of Sri Lanka depends on how Sri Lanka handles these issues. Right? So, these are the broader implications. Now, what is the way forward? Yes, the Sri Lankan government has to ensure that they have to start a political dialogue, a renewed political dialogue, by focusing or by engaging with all the ethnic groups. There has to be inclusive negotiation and political engagement with all the groups to ensure that their demands and concerns are being addressed. One. Second, empowering provincial councils, which means state elections, which means now as the national elections are over, the new president has to focus on the provincial elections and ensure that the state elections also happen as soon as possible, so that there is local representation, which means the local issues are addressed by the provincial leaders, right? India's constructive role, which means that India has to work with Sri Lanka to see how Sri Lanka addresses the problems Sri Lanka is facing. So India has to help Sri Lanka to address the challenges rather intervening in the domestic affairs of Sri Lanka. So India has to play a constructive role so as to ensure that Sri Lanka develops, because as Sri Lanka develops, it will help India to to maintain its security, as well as to ensure that the Indian Ocean region is open, free and accessible to each and every country. And reforming Tamilian leadership. Of course, the Tamilian leadership have to introspect and to address the demands and issues of the Tamilian population, right? So, this is how India and Sri Lanka have to work together to address the regional issues, as well as they have to set an international example when it comes to international cooperation. So, this is the first topic. I hope you understood each and every dimension with respect to the first topic, that is the Tamilian issue in India and Sri Lanka relations, right? Now, let us focus on the second topic. What is the second topic? Crimes against humanity and an obtuse Indian stance, right? So, in this article, we'll understand about the United Nations resolution on crimes against humanity, right? And this you may mark for prelims as well as mains under again international relations, that is important international agreements, right? So, this was a question asked in the year 2014. International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources, United Nations Convention on to Combat Desertification, the World Heritage Convention, which means any agreement which is which is international or which is regional, but it is very important. Such important agreements or conventions are usually asked in the UPSC examination, right? Let us try to understand the context. Now see, recently, United Nations has adopted a resolution. United Nations has adopted a resolution. Now, this resolution is very important. Why? Because it is one step. It is a step. It is a step towards a treaty on crimes against humanity. CAH, which means in order to address the crimes against humanity. In order to address crimes against humanity, there is no specific treaty. Recently, that is on December 14, United Nations has adopted a resolution. This resolution is a very important. Why? Because this resolution will pave a way to sign a treaty which addresses crimes against humanity. Which means that the international structure, the international legal structure does not address crimes against humanity. Right? Now, interestingly, India, right, is against some of the provisions of the treaty, which means India or the position of India is not aligning with the global framework with respect to crimes against humanity. Why India is reluctant to be a part of this treaty, we'll understand in some time. First and foremost, let's understand what is crimes against humanity. See, crimes against humanity, the name itself indicates, right? Which means crimes, these are some grave crimes, these are some grave crimes. They are committed against, or they are committed against civilians. Now, these are some serious crimes as part of systematic attack or systematic discrimination, which means there is a plan involved to target a specific group, specific community, right? Which means it's a planned move, planned systematic attack. It's a grave, it's a very, very serious offense against humanity. For example, which are these crimes? Like murder, torture. You must have heard the police tortures the poor people in the lockups, rape, or let's say enslavement. The way China enslaves the Uyghur Muslims. This is referred to as crimes against humanity. Now, this crime against humanity was used for the first time in the London Charter 1945 post the Second World War. Crimes against humanity, CAH, was used for the first time in the London Charter. This London Charter, it tried, it prosecuted the Nazi officials who persecuted against the Jews. Lakhs of Jews were killed by the Nazis, the Hitler, the Germans, right? So this was a crime against humanity, or rather a genocide. As I told you, as of now, the crime against humanity is addressed by Rome Statute, which means as of now, the crimes against humanity is addressed by the Rome Statute, which led to the establishment of International Criminal Court. As of now, the International Criminal Court looks after crimes against humanity. Now, ICC looks after many things. Among many things, one is CAH, which means there is no dedicated treaty to deal with crimes against humanity. There is no dedicated treaty to deal with crimes against humanity. No dedicated, no specific treaty. Now, the question is, if we have International Criminal Court, why do we need a crime against humanity treaty? We have ICC, which deals with crimes against humanity. And why do we need a specific treaty? See, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, right? The jurisdiction or the areas in which it operates is limited only to the member countries, which means the ICC can prosecute countries who are the members of ICC. For example, India is not a member of ICC. We'll discuss why. Which means ICC cannot prosecute India. ICC cannot prosecute India. Why? Because ICC can take action against only those countries that are part of ICC. State account. Now all the existing frameworks, they focus on individual responsibility. All the existing frameworks we have, Genocide Convention, then International Criminal Court. Now we need CH treaty because this treaty will also prosecute the states. It can take action against states or prevent the states from committing crimes against humanity. Just like we have Genocide Convention. See, this Genocide Convention is the first international treaty. This is the first international treaty that addresses the genocide. What is genocide? Genocide is nothing but killing of a religious, racial, ethnic community. A targeted killing. For example, some people refer, or the killing of Jews is referred to as genocide. Or some people in India refer to the Kashmiri exodus in 1989 as genocide. Why? Because thousands of people were affected. Right? So, all the existing frameworks, they focus on individual responsibility. We need this treaty because this treaty can also prosecute against the states. Right? Now, the treaty of CH can also be expanded to include other crimes like gender apartheid, terrorism, and exploitation of natural resources, which means even these crimes can be included and made a part of crime against humanity treaty. For example, the extent to which natural resources are being exploited by different countries. Terrorism, the way countries like Pakistan support terrorism, or gender apartheid. Now, gender apartheid is systematic discrimination or violence against a specific gender. Either it can be female, or let's say the LGBTQ community as well. Which means the LACH can also be expanded to include other crimes against humanity. All these things are nothing but crimes against humanity. That's the reason we need crimes against humanity treaty. Right? Now, what is India's stand on CH? See, I told you India is not a party of International Criminal Court. That is, India has not signed Rome Statute. Why? Because India feels that the ICC or the Rome Statute, or let's say the ICC prosecutor, the officer in ICC who prosecutes the countries, the decisions are influenced by political, let's say, political development. There is a political bias. Political There's a political bias in the decision ICC takes. For example, if the United Nations Security Council, the permanent members, the P5 permanent members, who are these countries? US, UK, Russia, China, and France. If these countries refer a case to ICC, then ICC will prosecute against that country. But for ICC to prosecute against a specific country, right, all the countries have to support the resolution or prosecution of ICC against a member country. India says that the structure of ICC, the structure of ICC is politically motivated. That's the reason we are not okay being a part of ICC. We are not okay being a part of ICC. At the same time, India wants that, right, in the ICC, or let's say Rome Statute, India wants that nuclear weapons, right, should also be a part of the Rome Statute, which means India wants that the nuclear weapons should be completely abandoned. Now, nuclear weapon as war crime is not included in the Rome Statute. India says that nuclear weapons, because of the catastrophic impact of nuclear weapons, this should be referred as war crime. But ICC or Rome Statute says no, will exclude nuclear weapons. So this point is valid. The nuclear weapons are war crimes. So this should also be included in the ICC Rome Statute. But these 5 countries say that no, it's not, because all these countries have nuclear weapons. That's the reason India has not signed Rome Statute. India feels that Rome Statute is discriminatory. And that's the reason India has not signed. Now, why is India opposing this treaty? In the context, we understood that India is reluctant to sign this treaty. One, because this treaty proposes that crimes done during peacetime. Now, crimes done during peacetime, not during armed conflict, is also part of this treaty. One. Second, enforced disappearances. Now, these two provisions are part of CH treaty. One, crimes during peacetime. India says that crimes during peacetime should not be a part of this treaty. Second, enforced disappearance should also not be a part of this treaty. India says that these two things should not be a part of this treaty. Why? Because there is, the application of enforced disappearances would vary state to state. So it will be very difficult to arrive at a universal understanding or definition of enforced disappearance. And second, crimes done during peacetime should be handled by the domestic laws and the domestic or national courts rather than international court or international treaty. So India does not want these two things a part of CH treaty. That's the reason India is objecting to this CAH treaty. And India says that when it comes to crimes against humanity, it should be addressed by the domestic laws. Domestic laws and the courts of the country. If you allow international player to deal with these crimes, then there will be international involvement in the domestic affairs. The sovereignty of a country will be questioned. That's the reason India is objecting to the CAH treaty, which means India wants that there should be a domestic law, right? So this is India's stand on CAH. Now, what are the challenges? See, first of all, India does not have a specific law. India says that the crimes against humanity should be dealt by domestic laws, but India does not have a specific law. Now, that doesn't mean that crimes against humanity, murder, rape is not addressed. For example, we have Indian Penal Code, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, right? So these are the provisions through which these crimes are dealt. But there is no specific law to deal with crimes against humanity. One. Now, when India recently amended the criminal laws, for example, IPC, CRPC, Indian Evidence Act with BNS, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, then BNSS. Now, India had a chance to include crimes against humanity in the recently amended criminal laws. But India did not do it. This was a missed opportunity. Inconsistency in argument. At the national level or during the negotiations of CH treaty, India says that these crimes should be dealt domestically, right? But there is no domestic law. There's inconsistency in argument. At the world level, India says that we need domestic law, but at the domestic level, we do not have a law. There is inconsistency, reluctance to engage. So, As I told you, India is not comfortable engaging with the crimes against humanity treaty or the talks. These are some of the challenges. So, what are the global implications of CAH treaty? What are the global implications? One, see, one, if we have CH treaty, that is crimes against humanity treaty, if we have this treaty, one, it will strengthen accountability, which means it will, it will complement, other international frameworks like the Genocide Convention and the Geneva Convention. What is Geneva Convention? Geneva Convention says that whenever there is a armed conflict, the common people like civilians, doctors should not be harmed. Women should not be harmed in the Geneva Convention. For example, let's say Russia and Ukraine are fighting a war. Geneva Convention says that in the armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine, both the countries should not target the civilians. Civilians are not a part of the conflict. So you should spare the civilians. You should not attack the doctors. And you should not attack the women and children. People who are not part of the armed conflict. So if we have a crime against humanity, this will complement other legal international frameworks, right? At the same time, it will also address the international legal gap, and most importantly, this will ensure justice to victims. This will ensure justice to victims. Expanding definitions, as I told you, other crimes such as terrorism, exploitation against natural resources can also be included and made a part of, CAH. So what is the way forward? Way forward is India has to make a domestic law as soon as possible to align with global framework. India, rather than showing reluctance, should engage constructively in negotiations so as to ensure that crimes like terrorism and nuclear weapons are also included in the crimes against humanity and strengthen international reputation. See, India wants to be a global player, right? India wants to be a Vishwa Guru. So if India wants to be a Vishwa Guru, India has to ensure that India stays committed to human rights, right? Human rights. India should advocate human rights. India should fight for justice, equality. India should fight against discrimination. So if India wants, or India truly wants to be a global leader, global player, then India has to show her commitment to human rights and justice, thereby engaging constructively with the parties involved in the CH treaty and ensure that other crimes are also included in the CAH treaty. I hope you understood this second topic as well, right? Any topic that you, any point, any concern, please let me know in the comment box. Yes, India did not sign Rome Statute due to sovereignty concerns. Yes, India does not want the involvement of the international players in the domestic affairs, right? See, crimes against humanity, right? Now, the proposal of CH states that crime against humanity, right? These are the grave concerns and they are part of the systematic attacks against civilians. Includes murder, rape, torture, enslavement. In a war crime, the countries are involved. Two countries are involved against each other. For example, Israel and Palestine, war crimes. Russia, Ukraine. But when it comes to crimes against humanity, yes, it can also be for example, let's say Palestine can accuse Israel of committing crimes against humanity, right? So war crimes involves two countries. Crimes against humanity not necessarily includes two countries. A country can also, let's say, target its own people. That's crimes against humanity. Okay, now let us focus on the third topic. Now, the title is Eklavya Schools Struggle to Meet 5% PVTG Subquota, right? So, you'll understand what is PVTG and Eklavya Model Residential Schools, right? This is important as part of prelims, current affairs as well as means, that is social justice. So, this was a question asked directly on PVTGs in the year 2018, right? What is the context? The context is that the Eklavya model residential schools are finding difficult or facing difficult to meet the 5% sub quota, which means these schools are mandated to give 5% sub quota to the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. They are finding it difficult to fill this 5% quota given to the particular vulnerable tribal groups. This is the context. First and foremost, let us try to understand what are Eklavya model residential schools, and then we can understand what are PVTGs. First and foremost, it was established in the year 1997-1998. Why? Purpose was to give quality education. Purpose was to give quality education to whom? To the scheduled tribes. The purpose was the welfare of the scheduled tribes. Funding was done through the grants given by the central government, which means it was dictated by Article 275 Clause 1. Now, this Article 275(1) states that the central government is obligated to give grants to this school. Why? For the betterment and for the welfare of the scheduled tribes. Every year from the Consolidated Fund of India is the bank account of the central government. So from that account, every year a specific amount will be dispersed towards this school. Purpose for providing quality education to the scheduled tribes. What are the features? It will be co-educational residential schools from class 6 to class 12. Then it will be on par with Navodaya Vidyalaya. The focus will be on arts, culture, sports. It will focus on the all-round development of the students. Next, capacity will be 480 students, out of which half will be boys, half will be girls. Next, non-ST students, which means, let's say of 480 students, that is only 10% students will be non-ST students. 90% students will be ST students. 10% will be non-ST. They can be from, let's say, OBC, SC, etc. Purpose is to focus on the betterment of the scheduled tribe students. This is referred to as Eklavya Model Residential Schools. I hope you understood what is Eklavya Model Residential Schools. Now, this school is managed by National Education Society for Tribal Students under the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Very, very important point for your print. So simply by heart this particular point. Now, what are PVTGs? Okay, first we'll understand the challenges faced by the schools. See, as I told you, the 5% quota, say 90% is given to ST, out of which 5% is given to PVTGs. PVTG is a group in the scheduled tribes. Okay, I'll explain you here. PVTGs are the most vulnerable or weak groups among these scheduled tribes. So 5%, we in India we have 75 PVTGs. How many? 75 PVTGs. 5% is quota is given to the PVTGs, which means these schools are unable to meet even the 5% sub quota. Why? There are many challenges. So some of the challenges, right? Some of the challenges are: one, poor infrastructure, right? Poor infrastructure. Then teachers shortage, poor quality of education, and then there is also financial pressure, which means these people are poor. The family expects them to work and earn money for their family. Now, state disparities. Not all the states are performing poor. Some of the states are also performing better. But by and large, the condition of the PVTGs is horrible or weak in our country. Centralized recruitment issues. Now see, the teachers are recruited centrally, but the teachers who are recruited centrally, they cannot engage with the students. Why? Because let's say for example, a teacher is recruited from the state of Punjab in Maharashtra. In Maharashtra, to deal or to talk with the Maharashtrian students, you need to know Marathi. How can a Punjabi teacher teach in Marathi? So this is issue which we need to address. Administrative gaps, again infrastructure is very poor. Then the schools are not upgraded, etc. These are some of the challenges faced by the schools. As I told you, they are the most vulnerable community in our country, most vulnerable scheduled tribes. Now in the year 1973, the Debhar Commission categorized or gave a name to the most vulnerable groups, referred to as the primitive tribal groups. In the year 2006, the central government renamed primitive tribal groups to particularly vulnerable tribal groups in the year 2006. And this categorization is done by Ministry of Home Affairs. Categorization of particularly vulnerable tribal groups, not by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. It is done by Ministry of Home Affairs. And so far, India has 75 PVTGs, out of which the majority of them are in Odisha. And these are the criteria for identification of PVTGs. Low levels of literacy, pre-agriculture level of technology, economic backwardness, and a stagnant or declining population. This is the third topic. I hope you understood the third topic as well. Now let us focus on the fourth topic. Polar sundial poised to become a center of attraction. Now we'll understand what is Polar Sundial and Vikram Sarabhai Space Center. A question was asked on the benefits of a space program. So what is the context? Now an unusual sundial. We'll understand what is sundial. An unusual sundial was displaced at the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center. This sundial was displayed at Vikram Sarabhai Center. What is sundial? See, sundial is nothing but, right, it tracks the movement of the sun and determines the time. It tracks It tracks the movement of sun and determines the time. Now this sundial has been used historically. This was used, as the record that we have, it was used 4,000 years back. The usage dates back to 4,000 years back. The Egyptian civilization was the one to use this sundial. Now for the sundial to operate, it needs sunlight, which means the sunlight has to be bright. Let's say if it's cloudy or during the night time, the sunlight does not work, which means the sundial is dependent on the sunlight. This is referred to as sundial. Now the new sundial, you can see this in the image. This new sundial, right, has some new features. And which are these new features? One, the sundial is positioned in a specific way to match the Earth's polar axis and equatorial plane. So the Earth's axis and the equatorial plane, it is positioned in such a way that it tracks the correct time. For example, the sundial fixes errors caused by how the Earth moves, which means we know that the Earth is rotating, which means the sundial is fixed in such a way that even if the Earth rotates or moves, it captures the right time. Next, the sundial includes a special adjustment for the longitude of Thumba. Why Thumba? Vikram Sarabhai Center is in Thumba. So it made a special adjustment to match the longitude of Thumba, enabling it to directly show the Indian Standard Time. So the adjustment has been done in such a way that despite the sundial is in south, that is Thumba, it gives us the Indian Standard Time rather than the local standard time. What is local standard time? It refers to solar time is based on the sun's position at a specific location. For example, let's say the north is Arunachal Pradesh, but the IST is based on the longitudinal position of 82.5 degree east, right? And what is Vikram? Yes. Next, now this part of sundial is a 3D printed miniature of the Rohini RH-200 rockets, symbolizing ISRO's achievements. Now, what is Rohini RH-200? It's a small versatile sounding rocket, which means used for experimental purpose, used for atmospheric and weather research, also used for scientific and educational design, right? Now, this is not that very important. Now, what is Vikram Sarabhai Center? Located Thumba, which is in Kerala. Then it was established in the year 1963, named after Vikram Sarabhai, who is referred to as the father of the Indian space program. Then it leads the center of ISRO, which all the launching vehicles are assembled and developed at this particular center. And these are some of the major programs of the Vikram Sarabhai Center, right? So you can please go through this. Now this fifth article, just you need to understand what exactly is the essence of the topic. What is the essence? The Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Ministry of New and Renewable Energy has given a deadline of June 26, stating that all the companies in our country who produce solar energy or who sell these solar equipments have to buy India made solar photovoltaic cells. So let's say if they want to get a government project, if you want to get a government project, then you have to ensure that you have to buy the Indian made solar cells. Only when you buy India made solar cells, the government will give you contract to the companies. So this July 26 is the deadline. Solar cells, this is important for the for the production of solar energy. See, Now, I hope you must have seen a solar panel. Solar panel, so this is a panel, right? And this is one module. So if, for example, if you see this one, so this is one panel, and a solar panel or a circuit is made up of many panels. In one panel, now a panel is made up of many cells. Government is saying that to the companies that you have to buy, or for these solar panels you need to buy the India made photovoltaic cells. India made photovoltaic cells. Now if I talk about the impact on cost, see, the Indian made photovoltaic cells, the Indian made cells are almost 2 times costlier than the Chinese alternatives. One, it is costly, which means if the are costly, it would also impact the cost of electricity per unit. It is estimated that for every unit, the electricity will get costly by 50 paisa to 1 rupee. Right. Next, as of now, India's installed capacity is 92 gigawatts of solar energy. As of now, we have produced 92 gigawatts, out of which 68.5 is produced in India, which means through the local made cells and local made, let's say, the panels. Now by 2027, we want to expand the production of solar energy from 68 megawatt to 140 gigawatt by 2027. And to promote the manufacturers who manufacture solar cells, the government is giving incentives to both the companies as well as the manufacturers. For example, we have the PM Rooftop Solar Program and PM Kusum. These two schemes mandate the use of Ministry of New and Renewable Energy approved domestically manufactured solar panels. So these schemes, they promote that the solar cells is indigenously manufactured so that more and more people get job, and this also boosts the economic productivity of our country. So these are the 5 topics of today's GNA. I hope you have understood each and every topic, any point that you have not understood, I request you to please ask in the comment section. Let us try to practice or solve a question, right? What is the question? India-Sri Lanka relations have been shaped by shared history, strategic interests, and ethnic complexities, including the Tamil issue. Critically analyze the role of Tamil aspirations in shaping the bilateral ties between the two nations. Now, again, when it comes to framing the answer, in the introduction, mention the importance or mention the fact that a new president, after a major fiasco in Sri Lanka, a new president has been elected, and this gives a renewed hope to Sri Lanka or people of Sri Lanka as well as the India and Sri Lanka relations. It highlights, or the visit of the Sri Lankan president highlights the historical and strategic importance of the India and Sri Lanka relations. Then, in the same light, also mention that Tamil issue will be another significant issue or point of discussion in the Indian-Sri Lanka relations. Then, in the body, highlight the Tamil issue. Highlight, in brief, highlight about the discrimination faced by the Tamilians, civil war, and post-war issues faced by the Tamilians. Right? Also mention the India-Sri Lanka, Accord of 1987. Then highlight the key areas that were discussed during the recent visit of the Sri Lankan president. Most importantly, you have to mention the broader implication. In implication, you have to focus that India is gradually shifting her focus from the Tamilian issue to counterbalancing China in Sri Lanka. You have to mention about the international actors. You have to mention about the Tamilian political parties. You have to mention about how the new government will reconcile the differences between majority and minority community. So these are the dimensions you have to mention. Finally, in the conclusion, again you need to give a ray of hope to the people in Sri Lanka as well as the betterment of India and Sri Lanka relations to ensure that South Asia becomes one of the progressive regions in the world. This is how you frame the answer. So for a detailed answer, I request you to please open the link in the comment section. It will take you to the DNA notes wherein you will find the detailed answer of this particular question. Now let us try to address the questions based out of topics discussed yesterday. The first statement, generic drugs, right, are bioequivalent to branded drugs and contain the same active pharmaceutical ingredients referred to as API. See, this is the essence of generic drugs. It gives the same effect as that of branded drugs. That's the reason India is known for her generic drugs and how India has contributed to alleviate the sufferings of people in the poor countries. So this statement is correct. India's Patent Act 1970 abolished product patents for pharmaceuticals, allowing the domestic production of generic drugs. Yes, by abolishing the product patents, India has allowed the domestic manufacturers to manufacture the same drugs with same effect, so as to help the poor people or poor people from poor countries address the disease or issues that they are facing. So both the statements are correct. Answer is option C. Next question is on crime and criminal tracking network and system. Now CCTNS was launched in 2009. Yes, under the National E-Governance Program to modernize policing and digitize crime records. Yes, this statement is correct. Now, National Crime Record Bureau is the nodal agency, yes, for implementing CCTNS, and it operates under the Ministry of Electronics and IT. No, it operates under the Ministry of Home Office. So this one is incorrect. CCTNS enables real-time data sharing and integration with other pillars of the criminal justice system under the ICJS. This statement is correct. Option C is the correct answer for question number 3. Next question is on the National Human Rights Commission. So the chairperson of NHRC is appointed by the president based on the recommendation of 6-member committee, right? And who are the 6 members? One is the Prime Minister, then we have the leader of opposition in Lok Sabha, leader of opposition in Rajya Sabha, then we have vice chairman of Rajya Sabha, then we have speaker, and then we have the Chief Justice of India. So these are the 6 people, right? So Prime Minister of India is a chairperson. Yes, he is the chairperson, true. The Speaker of the Lok Sabha and the Union Minister of Law and Justice are part of selection. No, they are not part of the selection committee. Who Speaker is the part, but the Union Minister of Law is not a part of it. So this one is incorrect. The leader of opposition in both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are members of the selection committee. Yes, this one is also correct. So 1, 2 and 4. Option B is the correct answer for question number 4. Now these questions pertain to the topics that we discussed today. First is on crimes against humanity, next is on PVTGs, and the last one is on the Vikram Sarabhai Peace Center. So I request you to please open the quiz link in the comment section, attempt all the 3 questions based out of today's topics. Make sure to post your score in the comment section, right? And that's it from today's stream, right? I hope you understood all the topics. Make sure that you revise each and every topic. Wherever I have highlighted few key points, make sure you are making a note of it, revising it, writing it down, and making sure that you have developed good command of the topics that we have discussed today. Most importantly, make sure that you are regularly listening to the DNA lectures that we bring for all the aspirants. Right? So before I call it a wrap, I request you to please hit the like, share and subscribe Narayana IS option. Thank you so much.